to get to. A planetary scientist at NASA is going to be joining me for quite the discussion here. It's a new hypothetical possibility, a cosmic explanation, if you will, for the Bible's Star of Bethlehem that guided the three wise men from Jerusalem to greet the baby Jesus. Not changing anyone's opinion, but just listening to a new theory on things. We have several live events that are going to be going on that we'll try to go to as they happen. A Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, is going to be holding a news conference following their big decision on whether to cut interest rates. Lots of eyeballs on that. There should be a press conference also starting soon to announce the establishment of a first of its kind New York-based Homeland Security Task Force. And then in D.C., President Trump will be participating in a roundtable within the next hour. So again, a lot that's happening today. We'll go to what we can as we go here, but we want to start at home with the ongoing conversation about people's shocking property tax bills that recently came in the mail. Yesterday, we talked with the chair of the Board of Review about the appeals process, reopening, giving people a chance to now protest their rate hikes, and some instances that went up 133% or more through December 12th. You have that time frame to go in and start your appeals process. I asked specifically about tax breaks to big downtown properties and the conversation surrounding a shifting tax burden to neighborhoods that really cannot afford it. He said, and I quote, "The overassessments are all over the place. There's no justification, and that it's an issue for the assessor to look at the models and figure out what's going on. No rhyme or reason, and you can't just blame it on the Board of Review." Cook County Assessor Fritz Kaegi is here with me now. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Yeah, hey, great to be here. Good to see you. Good to be here with your viewers.
So South and West Side leaders were joining with you today to call for property tax relief and to condemn the Board of Review's tax breaks for downtown commercial properties. Listening to what I just said, what is your reaction to that?
Well, it's no longer a debate. It is a fact that big cuts for commercial properties at the Board of Review have driven the increases that we're seeing, especially in Black and Latino neighborhoods. And 2/3 of the neighborhoods where their bills would have been flat or down, but for the shift that happened on cuts in big commercial properties downtown by the Board of Review. And I've spoken to hundreds of homeowners on the west and south sides just in the last few days, and they're shocked and upset by these increases that they're seeing. And I'm as shocked and upset as they are. And what the data shows, and you don't have to take my word for it, this comes from our treasurer, Maria Pappas, this is part of a pattern. In the last couple of years, as we've talked about on the show before, there was about $2 billion of tax burden that was passed on to homeowners by big cuts on commercial properties at the Board of Review. This year, it's about $500 million. It's a fact. It's not a debate. And that works out to about $700 per homeowner tacked on to the increase of their bill because of cuts for commercial properties. Now, the Board of Review can make all the excuses that they want for that, but it is a fact. And it's very troubling because some very famous big properties that are doing very well had lower bills this year. For example, some of the biggest hotels downtown, famous hotels that start with an H, their last time they were reassessed was in 2021 when they were empty. Now they've recovered. Their revenues per available room are above where they were before COVID, and yet their bills fall by millions of dollars. The data centers that host things like this interview that we're doing now, that are doing all this stuff on AI that people talk about, the biggest data center downtown, owned by a $50 billion company, has lower bills. And so that falls onto our neighbors. A lot of neighborhoods like Englewood that saw big tax increases, that was entirely explained by the burden shift that happened. If you look at Austin, same thing. In 2/3 of our Black and Latino neighborhoods where bills are up, they would have had flat or lower bills. And people are outraged. People are really feeling shocked. And that's what our press conference was about this morning.
Chair Cardenas said that there's a lot of misinformation about that shifting burden and that businesses have 25% of their assessed value. Homeowners, it's 10% of the assessed value, but that everyone is treated the same way. You would argue that's not the truth?
Well, again, he's providing an excuse for the fact of these cuts. And it's no excuse. You know, the way our property tax works under the law, under state law, under Cook County, is commercial is assessed at 25% of market value and residential is 10. But when Commissioner Cardenas says that, he's kind of revealing something about himself. He's saying that he's going to take the law into his own hands by giving these big commercial properties a mulligan for some reason that's beyond the law, and then he wants to pass on that burden to homeowners because he thinks that's a good excuse. I'm a fighter for the average homeowner, and the law says that we're supposed to be assessing all properties, commercial and residential, in line with what they're selling for. It's very simple. And when he, as the part of this pattern of the commissioners of the board review, is valuing properties too low, and a landmark county study showed that in several years after the pandemic, the board review set commercial properties 25% too low. That is what's causing that shift that Treasurer Pappas has pointed to in her reports, and that has continued this year. It's not a debate, it's a fact. $500 million of property tax burden passed on to homeowners, $700 billion for a homeowner. I don't accept those excuses because it doesn't reflect the prices that are actually being paid for properties out there, and it's shifting the burden on the homeowners and causing so much trouble. So that excuse is unacceptable.
Yeah, he told me that they follow standard guidelines, though, about rules and evidence, that everyone gets a fair shake, and that they're a quasi-judicial body. These are his words. They're a quasi-judicial body that oversees your office's work.
Well, let me tell you about another office that oversees their work, the Inspector General of Cook County. And they have said that a big critical vulnerability to the board review is that they take campaign contributions from the property tax appeals lawyers who practice before them. They can take money from those lawyers in the morning and then the evening hear a plea on them. And what the Inspector General of Cook County said is that is a critical vulnerability that diminishes the repute of that agency before the public. And this is why I, since I've been assessor, have in place a strict ethics code that forbids me from taking any campaign contributions from property tax appeals lawyers. And that's what the public wants to see. They have seen the property tax lawyers get pay to play, have these preferences where the burden is shifted onto them. They've seen big name politicians act as predators on homeowners, passing the burden onto them while they get rich, and people are sick of it. And this is what I'm calling out here, and I'm afraid we have another instance like this. So you can hear all the bureaucratic mumbo jumbo about quasi this and evidence that. Basically, they're taking evidence from people who are donating to their campaign. They're taking bogus appraisals, lowball appraisals that call a full meal a side salad and accepting that as valid. Well, what the county has looked at in studies after study is they're finding that the board review, by whatever rules it's taking, by whatever evidence it's taking, is coming up with values that are 25% too low in most of the years after the pandemic that they studied. And that has shifted billions of dollars onto the backs of our homeowners, which is why so many people's bills are up. And that's why we're so upset and shocked, just like homeowners are. And that's why it's got to stop.
If those ethics concerns are true, I could see where that would be a problem for sure. So you and those who gathered with you today are calling for relief for homeowners, urging taxpayers to ensure that they're receiving all exemptions that may be available to them. Let's go over the exemptions that are currently available and what you're hoping may get added to the list in years to come to help people out.
Absolutely. So let's work through the checklist for everyone watching out there, and then tell your friends too. First thing, first line of defense is let's look for exemptions on your property tax bill. These are savings that every homeowner is entitled to if it's their main residence. Look on the bottom left-hand side of the tax bill that the treasurer sent you. If there's zeros across all the exemptions, you're probably not getting your homeowner's exemption. If you're over 65, you're entitled to the senior exemption too. And if your income is under 65,000 as a household, if you're a senior, you're also entitled to the freeze to lock assessment in place while home values are rising around you. We've been doing many events the last few days talking to homeowners, and we're seeing hundreds of people, dozens of people at every event that we go to who are missing these exemptions. 1 out of every 3 homeowners doesn't have this exemption. So, for example, if you live in Austin and if you don't have a homeowner's exemption, that would almost wipe out the typical increase that you experienced this year. So let's get you signed up. You might not have noticed the need for the exemption in the past. You can just come to our office, go to our website. We can issue you a corrected tax bill that you'll pay over at the Treasury. This is one of the few times in life where you can go back in time and be treated as if you had those exemptions. You can go back up to 4 years, but we want to make sure that you get signed up for those now before this year is done. That could be thousands of dollars coming back to every homeowner. That's the first line of defense. And we just did some events in West Garfield Park in the last couple of days, and many of the people who are coming to us don't have their exemption. So that's the first thing let's go to.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're proposing a circuit breaker legislation that would cap unsustainable tax increases. Talk a little bit more about that.
States, plus the District of Columbia, they recognize as a cornerstone of their property tax system that no matter how well you design a property tax system, there are going to be people who are vulnerable to spikes, to changes in bills. And we need to have relief for them so that people aren't displaced from their home, placed under stress, and potentially lose their home. So what we're proposing is a property tax relief program called a circuit breaker that would take from the best features of those 29 other states and give you relief if your bill spiked 25% or more. If your income is below a certain level to qualify, we would propose $100,000, and you would get relief for up to half of the increase in your bill that you experienced for 3 years. It's not a permanent relief, but it gives you time to adjust your finances. Right now, what we hear from so many people is that suddenly you have to pay $1,000 or more than you had to last year, and you have to do it in 30 days. And it causes so much stress for families, and it puts people in real danger of losing their homes. So that's why we need to have this as part of our system here. It would require some state funding. It would require about $200 million a year. That's less than half of our state's budget, and it's worthwhile to do that like 29 other states do, to recognize that it's so important that we have hundreds of thousands of families that are put in this situation every year, so that we should be providing relief for them so that they have time to make decisions and adjust their finances and not be put in danger of losing their home.
Do you know what kind of support or even backlash that this proposal is getting right now?
Well, we're supported by the Southland Regional Mayors and Managers Association. They represent the mayors of communities in the south suburbs that have really dealt with some of the toughest situations where bills have spiked as housing values have risen in their communities and as the Board of Review has slashed commercial property values in their communities. They've really felt the brunt of it. So they're the first to recognize that. The Southland Regional Mayoral Black Caucus supports the circuit breaker. I wrote an op-ed in the Tribune more than half a year ago with leading mayors in the south and west suburbs who represent the communities with the highest tax rates, calling for this. We've done town halls with leaders and mayors down there for it. And more community members are coming around to see the need for this. You might remember a few years ago, tax bills spiked in Pilsen, and we've worked with members in the Pilsen community to develop this program. We work directly with leaders in Pilsen in the community to have this program put into place, and more people are coming to recognize the need for this. We hear from our leaders in Springfield that let's try to design a program that can be statewide, that can be put in place statewide. So we are working on designing that, and we will introduce it in the spring session.
Okay, we'll look for that update for sure. I'll put a pin in it. We'll circle back. But your office found that nearly 250,000 households across Cook County have seen these unsustainable tax bill increases in recent years. I do want to ask you, kind of on a final note, what you say to people who feel like there's a blame game, a finger pointing thing that's going on while their bills continue to rise.
Well, what we do is we try to tell the truth to show them what's going on, and then we also show that we're ready to practically help and be the fighter for them in this process so that someone's fighting for them. So first of all, we show how if in some cases, we basically what we do is our assessments are matching what houses are selling for in your community and other properties too. And it's a conservative estimate. We don't just take a couple sales. We need to see hundreds of sales over a period of a few years to set our assessments. Third parties show that our assessments are in line with market. If anything, they're a very conservative estimate of market values, but we also make sure that we're walking humbly and that we train our analysts to be in our outreach team to be aware of situations where we might have been off, or we didn't have a key critical detail. Maybe the foundation of the home is broken, or there's some other detail where we didn't get it right. And that's where we need to be attentive to homeowners who are in that situation so that we're listening. But we also want to shine a light on these practices where the board review is shifting so much. We've seen in the last 3 years, bills spike in double digits in the south suburbs, in the north suburbs, and now in the city this year because of huge amounts of tax burden being shifted onto people that data is showing are not earned, are not merited, that they're getting reductions that they don't deserve at the commercial level, at the board review that's being shifted onto them. And it's important that people know that so that the system can get better. And someone needs to fight for the average homeowner and not just stand idly by and twiddle your thumbs. We're instead rolling up our sleeves, playing the role that we need to make and advocating for the average taxpayer. That's why I fight for the circuit breaker. That's why I shine a light and make sure that the county is measuring and studying these changes on appeal. That's why I applaud Treasurer Pappas when she puts out reports like she did showing that $2 billion of tax levy burden had been shifted onto homeowners the last few years because of appeals, largely at the board of review. Someone needs to fight for taxpayers when this is happening. And so you might call that finger pointing, but it is a fact that we had $500 million shifted onto homeowners this year. No amount of excuses can justify that or really be merited or just in the eyes of homeowners who are feeling these bills rising.
Assessor Kaegi, thank you so much for coming on Chicago Live. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Anita. Thanks to all the viewers. And please look us up at cookcountyassessoril.gov. Thanks.
All right. You take care. And again, everyone, you have until December 12th for the appeals process with the Board of Review. Make sure you look over your bills, and if you need some revisiting, make sure you seek them out. Okay, I mentioned at the top of our broadcast that there would be a press conference for a first-of-its-kind New York-based Homeland Security Task Force. That has just started. Let's listen into that for a bit.
And our visitors. At the Southern District, across the Justice Department, and across law enforcement, with our federal and state partners, we hear what New Yorkers want, and we are laser focused on delivering for them. Crime is down, but it is still way above where it should be, particularly for our most vulnerable. And that's really what this is all about. It's about delivering public safety for the most vulnerable people in New York. It's down because of the hard work of the men and women behind me. Let me give you a few highlights over the last year. Our agencies have collectively investigated and charged murders, shootings, stabbings, sex trafficking, and narcotics distribution by Tren de Aragua, TDA, and many other brutally violent gangs. We've charged over a dozen narco-terrorists and members of state-sponsored drug cartels. We've charged multiple people with fentanyl distribution and precursor production. Gun charges, federal gun charges, are being brought at twice the rate of previous years. And most recently, we had a wide sweep of narcotics trafficking in and around Washington Square Park. The Washington Square Park effort exemplifies what we can do with a whole of law enforcement approach to public safety. A few data points. From 2020 to 2023 alone, more than 10,000 people died of fatal drug poisoning in New York City. Washington Square Park was an epicenter of this crisis. During that period, the NYPD and medical personnel responded to over 65 reports of apparent overdoses in the park. With the great men and women of the New York Police Department, the DEA, and our other federal partners, those days are behind us. This is an example that we're going to follow going forward. We look forward to making New York safer each and every day for every person in New York. I'm now going to introduce Mike Considine, the First Assistant from the Eastern District of New York. Mike?
Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon. As Jay mentioned, I'm Mike Considine, First Assistant U.S. Attorney in Brooklyn. The United States Attorney, Mr. Nacella, is on sick leave today and sends his regrets for not being with his esteemed HSTF partners. This historic collaboration occurring with this task force strengthens our mission to defend the citizens of our districts from the transnational criminal organizations, which Jay mentioned, human smugglers, and cyber criminals who inflict tremendous damage to our country. And we've already seen remarkable results. For example, our office is prosecuting the infamous cartel leader, RCQ, Rafael Caro Quintero, who was charged with the murder of DEA agent Kiki Camarano. What's more, our collective efforts have led to the conviction of El Mayo, Ismael Zambada Garcia, co-founder of the Sinaloa cartel. He operated a continuing criminal enterprise that trafficked massive quantities of fentanyl, cocaine, and other drugs into the United States. Lastly, we are working to cut off alternate revenue streams for the Jalisco cartel, designated as a foreign terrorist organization. And to that end, we charge 2 individuals, Julio Cesar Montero Pinzon and Carlos Andre Rivera Varela, with providing material terrorism support through a sprawling timeshare fraud scheme targeting American citizens. A wanted poster depicting these defendants is being released today. We would be remiss if we did not also express our appreciation for all of our agency partners, those here today and those who could not be with us. We are all collectively committed to improving the quality of life for our citizens by dismantling these corrupt organizations from their very top. Let me now turn over the podium to Chris Rea, Assistant Director in charge of the FBI New York Field Office.
All right, thank you, Mike. Again, I'm Christopher Rea. I'm the Assistant Director of the FBI's New York Field Office. Today, along with my colleagues, I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with other federal, state, and local partners to announce the first of its kind regional New York Homeland Security Task Force. This new team was created as a deliberate response to the growing threat posed by transnational criminal enterprises and foreign terrorist organizations. And quite frankly, it's initiatives like this and this task force that have contributed to the drastic decrease in violent crime, not only here in New York City, but across the country. FBI New York has a long history disrupting gangs and other sophisticated criminal groups, specifically cartels. The threat we face today is more complex, more violent, and more interconnected than ever. Utilizing our proven Joint Terrorism Task Force model, which, as you know, is one of the most accomplished and renowned task force models in history, we are bringing the full force of the federal, state, and local government to bear against the threat by combining operational and intelligence capabilities. Additionally, with the new authorities and investigative tools granted to us after the designation of the most violent drug cartels and transnational gangs as foreign terrorist organizations, or FTOs, we will systematically and methodically dismantle these enterprises who are responsible for the pervasive trafficking of lethal drugs and weapons into our communities. Since standing up the New York HSTF earlier this year, our agents, analysts, and professional staff got right to work, and their hard work is already paying massive dividends. Today, I would like to share with you just 2 of the multiple high-level cases our New York HSTF have been involved in. The first one, in August 2025, our office coordinated with the Southern District in New York to charge and arrest 7 leaders and members of a violent Mexico-based drug trafficking organization for the alleged trafficking of firearms and smuggling dozens of kilograms of cocaine, meth, and fentanyl into this country. Their alleged criminality plagued our communities, even jeopardizing innocent bystanders with public rivalry shootings. Secondly, as First Assistant U.S. Attorney Considine mentioned, we are seeking information for 2 high-ranking leaders of CJNG, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Our FBI DEA Trident Directorate has aggressively utilized those new authorities that I just mentioned, which had been previously only authorized under national security cases and our JTTF, against the new FTO designation of CJNG. As mentioned earlier, Carlos Andres Rivera Varela and Julio Cesar Montero Pinzon are wanted for allegedly providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization and money laundering conspiracy. If you recognize those charges, that foreign terrorist charge, as a charge that until now had only been available to charge through our JTTF. And now, due to the new authorities that have been granted to us, we can now charge that charge under a foreign terrorist organization. These fugitives allegedly funneled profits from a complex fraud scheme to finance CJNG in support of drug trafficking and other crimes. If you have any information related to either of these subjects, please call 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit a tip at fbi.tips.gov. Additionally, the FBI is offering a reward of up to $245,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of these fugitives. I would like to personally thank SAC Patel and SAC Chavis, as well as all the participating agencies, for their commitment to combating the persistent cartel threat and the drug distribution network. And thank you to U.S. Attorneys Clayton and U.S. Attorney Nacella for your aggressive prosecution of these critical cases. These judicial successes directly translate into taking bad guys off of our streets. Through unified partnership, we will continue to defend the homeland from evolving threats, safeguard critical infrastructure, and strengthen national resilience. Now, I'd like to introduce the SAC of New York Internal Revenue Services Criminal Investigation, Harry Chavis.
So we were listening in there again to this historic press conference as they are announcing a first of its kind New York-based Homeland Security Task Force, a regional New York Homeland Security Task Force. They talked about crime being down, but still too much for many people, especially in vulnerable populations. And in fact, in New York City, we were looking it up as they were speaking. They did have a 12-day stretch there without homicides, but they also talked about delivering public safety for the most vulnerable and increasing that. We listened to the assistant U.S. attorney in Brooklyn, also the assistant director for the New York FBI field office there, as they spoke about transnational criminal enterprises, human and drug smugglers there, and trying to dismantle what they call corrupt organizations from the top. They said their hard work is already paying off for this partnership that's taken place, and they're looking forward to the many more things that they'll be able to do now that they have created, again, this first of its kind regional New York Homeland Security Task Force. Let's take a quick break. We are awaiting a major announcement from the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. Whether they decide to cut the interest rate point or not, we should be hearing very soon. 1:31 right now. Much anticipated moment is happening. Federal Reserve Board Chair Jerome Powell is speaking. Let's go ahead and hear what he has to say about whether they cut the rate today or not.
Thus supporting effective control of our policy rate. I will have more to say about monetary policy and its implementation after briefly reviewing economic developments. Although some key government data have yet to be released, available indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a moderate pace. Consumer spending appears to have remained solid, and business fixed investment has continued to expand. In contrast, activity in the housing sector remains weak. The temporary shutdown of the federal government has likely weighed on economic activity in the current quarter, but these effects should be mostly offset by higher growth next quarter, reflecting the reopening. In our summary of economic projections, the median participant projects that real GDP will rise 1.7% this year and 2.3% next year, somewhat stronger than projected in September. In the labor market, although official employment data for October and November are delayed, available evidence suggests that both layoffs and hiring remain low, and that both households' perceptions of job availability and firms' perceptions of hiring difficulty continue to decline. The official report on the labor market for September, the most recent release, showed that the unemployment rate continued to edge up, reaching 4.4%, and that job gains had slowed significantly since earlier in the year. A good part of the slowing likely reflects a decline in the growth of the labor force due to lower immigration and labor force participation, though labor demand has clearly softened as well. In this less dynamic and somewhat softer labor market, the downside risks to employment appear to have risen in recent months. In our SEP, the median projection of the unemployment rate is 4.5% at the end of this year and edges down thereafter. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Very little data on inflation have been released since our meeting in October. Total PCE prices rose 2.8% over the 12 months ending in September, and excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices also rose 2.8%. These readings are higher than earlier in the year as inflation for goods has picked up, reflecting the effects of tariffs. In contrast, disinflation appears to be continuing for services. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have declined from their peaks earlier in the year, as reflected in both market and survey-based measures. Most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. The median projection in the SEP for total PCE inflation is 2.9% this year and 2.4% next year, a bit lower than the median projection in September. Thereafter, the median falls to 2%. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by a quarter percentage point to 3.5 to 3.75%. In the near term, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside and risks to employment to the downside, a challenging situation. There is no risk-free path for policy as we navigate this tension between our employment and inflation goals. A reasonable base case is that the effects of tariffs on inflation will be relatively short-lived, effectively a one-time shift in the price level. Our obligation is to make sure that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem. But with downside risks to employment having risen in recent months, the balance of risks has shifted. Our framework calls for us to take a balanced approach in promoting both sides of our dual mandate. Accordingly, we judged it appropriate at this meeting to lower our policy rate by a quarter percentage point. With today's decision, we have lowered our policy rate 0.75 of a percentage point over our last 3 meetings. This further normalization of our policy stance should help stabilize the labor market while allowing inflation to resume its downward trend toward 2% once the effects of tariffs have passed through. The adjustments to our policy stance since September bring it within a range of plausible estimates of neutral and leave us well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our summary of economic projections, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path of the federal funds rate under what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario for the economy. The median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 3.4% at the end of 2026 and 3.1% at the end of 2027, unchanged from September. As is always the case, these individual forecasts are subject to uncertainty, and they're not a committee plan or decision. Monetary policy is not on a preset course, and we will make our decisions on a meeting-by-meeting basis. Let me turn now to issues related to the implementation of monetary policy, with the reminder that these issues are separate from and have no implications for the stance of monetary policy. In light of the continued tightening in money market interest rates relative to our administered rates and other indicators of reserve market conditions, the committee judged that reserve balances have declined to ample levels. Accordingly, at today's meeting, the committee decided to initiate purchases of shorter-term Treasury securities, mainly Treasury bills, for the sole purpose of maintaining an ample supply of reserves over time. Such increases in our securities holdings ensure that the federal funds rate remains within its target range and are necessary because the growth of the economy leads to rising demand over time for our liabilities, including currency and reserves. As detailed in a statement released today by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, reserve management purchases will amount to $40 billion in the first month and may remain elevated for a few months to alleviate expected near-term pressures in money markets. Thereafter, we expect the size of reserve management purchases to decline, though the actual pace will depend on market conditions. In our implementation framework, an ample supply of reserves means that the federal funds rate and other short-term interest rates are primarily controlled by the setting of our administered rates, rather than day-to-day discretionary interventions in money markets. In this regime, standing repurchase agreement, or repo operations, are a critical tool to ensure that the federal funds rate remains within its target range, even on days of elevated pressures in money markets. Consistent with this view, the committee eliminated the aggregate limit on standing repo operations. These operations are intended to support monetary policy implementation and smooth market functioning and should be used when economically sensible. To conclude, the Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing our inflation sustainably down to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. At the Fed, we will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Howard.
Thank you. Howard Schneider with Reuters. Just first turning to the statement, just to be clear, we're on the same page here. The insertion of the phrase, considering the extent and timing of additional adjustments, does that indicate that the Fed is now on hold until there's some clearer signal from inflation or jobs or the evolution of the economy along the baseline outlook?
So, yes, the adjustments since September bring our policy within a broad range of estimates of neutral. And as we noted in our statement today, we are well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. That new language points out that we'll carefully evaluate that incoming data. And also, I would note that having reduced our policy rate by 75 basis points since September and 175 basis points since last September, the Fed funds rate is now within a broad range of estimates of its neutral value, and we are well positioned to wait to see how the economy evolves.
And if I could follow up on the outlook there, it seems like with the additional GDP growth coupled with easing inflation and a fairly steady unemployment rate, This seems like a pretty optimistic outlook for next year. What's given rise to that? Is this an early bet on AI? Is there some sense of improving productivity out there? What's driving that?
So a number of things are driving what's happening in the forecast. And I would say if you look broadly at outside forecasts, you do see a pickup in growth in many of those now too. So it is it's partly that consumer spending has held up. It's been resilient, and it to another degree it is that AI spending on data centers and related to AI has been holding up business investment. So overall, the baseline expectation for next year is, at least at the Fed, and I think with outside forecasters too, is a pickup in growth from today's relatively low level of 1.7%. I mentioned that the SEP median is 1.7 for this year growth and 2.3 for next year. You actually, some of that is due to the shutdown. So you can take 0.2 out of 2026 and put it in 2025. So it would really be 1.9 and 2.1. But overall, yes, for a few reasons, fiscal policy is going to be supportive, and as I mentioned, AI spending will continue. The consumer continues to spend, so it looks like the baseline would be solid growth next year.
Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking our questions here. You had previously described rate cuts in terms of a risk management framework, and kind of following up on what Howard was asking, is the risk management phase of rate cuts over here, and have you taken out sufficient insurance, I guess, against potential weakness in terms of the data we might get next week when it comes to employment?
So we're going to get a great deal of data between now and the January meeting, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And the data that we get are going to factor into our thinking. But yes, we have, if you go back, we held our policy rate at 5.4% for more than a year because inflation was high, very high, and unemployment and the labor market was really solid at that point. So what happened is over last summer of 24, inflation came down and the labor market began to show real signs of weakness. And so we decided, as our framework tells us to do, that when the risks to the two goals become more equal, you should move from a stance that favors really dealing with one of them, in that case inflation, to a more balanced, more neutral setting. And so we did that. We did some cutting, and then we paused for a while to work our way through what was happening in the middle of the year. And then we resumed cuts in September, and we've cut now 3. We've now cut a total of 175 basis points. And as I mentioned, we feel like where we're positioned now we're well positioned to wait and see how the economy evolves from here.
If I could just follow up on the SEP, you have a whole lot of a big increase in the growth numbers, but not a big decline in the unemployment numbers. And is that an AI factor in there? What is going on in terms of the dynamic of you get more growth, but you don't get a whole lot of decline in unemployment? Thank you, sir.
So it is, the implication is obviously higher productivity. And some of that may be AI. It just also, I think, productivity has just been almost structurally higher for several years now. So if you start thinking of it as 2% per year, you can sustain higher growth without more job creation. Of course, higher productivity is also what enables incomes to rise over long periods of time. So it's basically a good thing. But that's certainly the implication.
Thank you. Colby Smith with the New York Times. Today's decision was clearly very divided. It wasn't just the 2 official dissents against the cut, but there were also soft dissents from 4 others. And I'm just wondering if this reluctance from several people to support recent reductions suggests that there is a much higher bar for cuts in the near term. And what exactly does the committee need to see if things are well positioned right now to support a January reduction?
Sure. So let me just say, as I mentioned, and as I've mentioned here before, the situation is that our 2 goals are a bit in tension, right? So interestingly, everyone around the table at the FOMC agrees that inflation is too high and that we want it to come down, and agrees that the labor market has softened and that there's further risk. Everyone agrees on that. where the difference is how do you weight those risks, and what does your forecast look like, and where do you, ultimately where do you think the bigger risk is, and it's very unusual to have persistent tension between the two parts of the mandate, and when you do, this is what you see, and I think it's actually what you would expect to see, and we do see it. Meanwhile, the discussions we have are as good as any we've had in my 14 years at the Fed. They're very thoughtful, respectful, and you just have people who have strong views, and we come together and we reach a place where we can make a decision. We made a decision today. We had 9 out of 12 supported it, so fairly broad support. But it's not like the normal situation where everyone agrees on the direction and what to do. It's more spread out, and I think that's only inherent in the situation. In terms of what it would take, we all have an outlook in terms of what's going to come, but I think ultimately having cut 75 and the effects of the 75 basis points will only begin to be coming in. As I've said before a couple times, we're well positioned to wait to see how the economy evolves. We'll just have to see. And we will get, as you know, quite a bit of data. I should mention on the data, as long as I'm talking about it, that we're going to need to be careful in assessing, particularly the household survey data. There are very technical reasons about the way data are collected in some of these measures, both in inflation and in labor, in the labor market, so that the data may be distorted and not just sort of more volatile, but distorted, and that's really because data was not collected in October and half of November. So we're going to get data, but we're going to have to look at it.
Well, there it is. The Federal Reserve has now approved the third rate cut for the year, going down another 1/4 percentage of a point here. 3.5% to 3.75% is where we're sitting right now. That would be the lowest in more than 3 years. And in fact, if we can go to the big board, I do want to give some context as to what I'm seeing about what has happened here. There we go. You see the green on the screen as to how we've talked for days about how investors were waiting on this information, kind of hedging their bet that, yes, we would get another percentage cut again, as we're seeing today. And so the stocks are rallying here on the heels of this decision now by the Federal Reserve. The Dow is up more than 300 points, almost to 400 points here. We're also seeing that the NASDAQ is mainly flat, but the S&P rose significantly today as well. And just going back into some of the things that the Federal Chair, Jerome Powell, talked about here, he said that decision really is based on a weakening job market, in fact, and stubborn inflation that he said everyone around their table still agrees is far too high, above their target level for inflation in the country. And then also the delayed economic data from the government shutdown is also weighing in on this. If you were listening in there to the questions from some of the reporters, they also talked about the divide on this particular decision here. So 9 members of the rate setting committee voted for this 1/4 point cut. There were 3 who dissented to it. One of those was the Fed governor, Stephen Moran, who President Trump installed onto that committee to try to push them to be more aggressive. And he actually wanted them to go down 1/2 a point. So we got a 1/4 percentage point. He wanted them to go down 1/2 percentage point here. But one of the things to keep in mind here, speaking of President Trump, of course, he has not agreed with the Federal Reserve Board Chair, Jerome Powell, for quite some time. Hasn't felt like he's made these cuts in time to really be effective for people. And they're only forecasting 1 cut next year. But a lot could change because the Federal Board Chair, Jerome Powell, his term is up in May, and President Trump has already indicated that he'll be replacing him and should be submitting a nomination for that position very soon. So again, going back into this 1/4 point around 3.5 to 3.75% here, the lowest in more than 3 years. More dissent, though, among that committee than we have seen in 6 years. So it wasn't unanimous, but this is where we are. It's 1:50 right now. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with that conversation that I mentioned about a planetary scientist from NASA, kind of giving us some explanation after we're hearing a cosmic version of what that star that the three wise men followed in the Bible to get to Jesus, baby Jesus, and the Christmas story, what they may have actually seen in the sky. We'll be talking with a NASA scientist after this. Welcome back, everyone. We're approaching 1:55 here, and you know, astronomers have long sought a cosmic explanation as to the Bible star of Bethlehem that guided the three wise men from Jerusalem to Bethlehem and to the baby Jesus. So now we're hearing from a scientist who says he thinks it was a comet. Yeah, a planetary scientist now with NASA is joining me now. Mark Matney, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Good to be here.
Okay, walk me through this. What the possibility, the cosmic explanation here?
So scientists have for a long time tried to find an explanation for the star Bethlehem, the planetary alignments, a supernova, something like that. But one of the things that's always puzzled them is the description in the book of Matthew that said the star went before the Magi until it came and stood over the place where the child was. And there's really nothing in astronomy, or people thought there was nothing in astronomy that behaves that way. Stars, planets, moon, sun all rise in the east and set in the west. They don't pause over a location for an extended length of time. And I actually came up many years ago with the idea that perhaps a comet, a bright comet coming close to the Earth at just the right speed and just the right direction and just the right distance, could temporarily pause over a location on a rotating Earth. It's like we have geosynchronous satellites now that pause over a location 24/7 over the equator, but they're specifically put in those orbits. But a comet like that would pause for a couple of hours over a location. And what I was able to do was take some observations by the Chinese that were done in 5 BC of a comet and take that information that they provided and come up with an orbit that would in fact do that. And so that's my theory, is that a plausible theory for a comet that conforms to the Chinese observations and behaves in the way that's described in the book of Matthew.
So, as I understand it, you worked at a planetarium that ran a Christmas sky showing and telling the story of the Star of Bethlehem. Were there a lot of questions? Did people come in with a lot of questions about this? I mean, I understand like the scientific community wanting to have answers about everything, but were there a lot of just everyday people who wondered and came in with questions?
It's a very, very, very popular topic, and scientists have been dealing with it for centuries. I mean, Johannes Kepler, the inventor of the planetary laws of motion, he actually speculated about it. And so there's a tremendous amount of public interest in this particular topic, almost out of proportion to the coverage in the Bible. It's actually a very short passage in the Bible, in Matthew's Christmas narrative. So, there's always a lot of interest. Most of the interest is not technical per se. There's just people very, very interested and curious. For some reason, this time of year, because it's Christmas, brings out a lot of curiosity.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then, of course, we have the age of disclosure that's out there now. And one of the, I guess, one of the points of contention in it is that, well, if people knew all of these things for years and years, that it would shatter people's religious beliefs. It would shatter people's, thoughts on pretty much everything.
No, I don't think so. I think scientists and a lot of scholars have thought deeply about this for a long time. This is not something new. It's just simply I came up with a plausible solution. In fact, Matthew's description is very straightforward. It's not particularly sensational. Although the strange behavior of the star. So the fact that it might have been a natural phenomenon doesn't seem to me to be necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people approach things with their own preconceived ideas, and I just like to think about different ways to think about things like this.
Mm-hmm. And some other astronomers think that maybe the Chinese record could be misleading. What are your thoughts?
All I can say is I'm not the first person that's used the Chinese records. Yes, Chinese records can be misleading, but we have Chinese records of Halley's Comet on multiple returns. We have Chinese records of novas in the sky. We have Chinese records of other comets. So they've proven to be, in general, pretty accurate. Again, they were recording for their own purposes, but it is interesting that the Chinese records have shown over and over again to be quite accurate.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the other common questions that you got that you started to research in working in a planetarium?
Well, I was at a planetarium when I was in college, so it's been a few years since I've been in a planetarium. But I think there's always, it's interesting, there's always a subset of the population, just the general population, that has an interest in things in astronomy, whether it be stars, whether it be NASA, whether it be the history of our universe. It's always a fascinating story. And as far as the Christmas star itself, I think our planetarium shows and planetarium shows today lay out most of the major theories that are out there and try to portray them in a way that people can understand. Like I said, I'm not the first that has tried to do this. There have been more than 400 books or articles written on the topic. It's just this is my contribution to the field.
Mm-hmm. What is forensic astronomy?
I saw that. Forensics in the law is where you take evidence that is already, at a crime scene and try to reconstruct what happens. Mm-hmm. So when we do astronomy today with large telescopes and with space telescopes, but when you have history, when you're looking back in history, you're like a medical examiner trying to piece together from incomplete clues what happens. So I think that's the idea there.
Very interesting. And what has been some of the feedback that you've gotten from presenting this theory?
For the most part, it's been very, very positive. People get excited. I think, like I said, it's a topic of much interest. It depends on the person, obviously, but most people that are curious about it really like my theory and really like, and like I said, most of the feedback I've gotten is quite positive.
Mm-hmm. You said most. So the pushback, what has that been like? I mean, what pushback have you gotten? What were the questions that people say like, no, because what?
Well, a couple things. One, we have the Chinese record. That's well established. And we have the record from the Bible. But you would expect such a bright comet to have been visible to the Greeks and the Romans. And yet we have no record from that time period of the Greeks and Romans saying anything. But it turns out that our records of that last decade of the first century BC is actually quite incomplete. We don't have very complete records. So sometimes we're limited in what our data sets, and that's kind of the forensic part. You don't always have all the data you want. So I'm always on the lookout for possible evidence that hasn't been tapped. But I think until we have a corroborating evidence from other observers from the ancient world, I think this remains in the category of plausible but not proven. But my goal here was, again, not to prove that this was the Star of Bethlehem, but to show that the idea that no astronomical object can behave this way, we can no longer say that, because I proposed one that could have behaved exactly as Matthew described.
Very interesting indeed. Are there some other big stories connected to seasons that you're kind of like, maybe I need to look into that next?
I figure one big task at a time. This actually took considerable. See, I didn't actually do this as NASA work. This was my own time, and there's plenty of work to do in my job. But perhaps I'll approach another topic in the near future. But right now, I'm just enjoying this and sharing it with people.
All right, that gets us through the Christmas season. We'll circle back with you maybe around Easter.
Okay. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas as well. Thank you. All right, everybody. We are in the 2 o'clock hour. Let me tell you a little bit about what we can expect. Then we'll take a break and regroup and start to walk through it together here. So we're going to talk about the Illinois Endangered Species List. It just came out, and we've invited someone to come on to tell us about which animals are on there, why specifically for Illinois, and what we can be doing maybe differently or better to help protect the endangered species that are in our state. We will have one of our meteorologists in here if we can to talk a little bit more about the weather outside. It has been frightful since we're in a Christmas mood. This morning, we definitely saw that mix of snow and rain that they had prepared us for. Emily was in here with us yesterday getting us ready for that, and it definitely came to fruition. We're going to talk about old foam furniture and some of the issues that could be causing in people's homes, as well as speaking of issues, a new app that could help emergency services to get a better idea of what exactly is happening when you call 911. It's pretty riveting stuff, and so we'll get to that conversation as well. It's 2:03 right now, though. Let's take a break. 2:05 right now. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us here on Chicago Live. I mentioned we were going to have this conversation about new technology, and I think every day that we talk about the advancements in technology, we see the good, the bad, the ugly. This could be a game changer for a lot of people when every second counts. A new way to share live video with emergency services to get the help that you need. So Alistair Breeze is a software engineer with Google who is here to explain how this works and enlighten us all to what may be available. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, so it's launching today, is that right?
Yep, so today we're launching the new feature, which is Android Emergency Live Video, which allows emergency call takers when you call 911 to decide that it might actually be a scenario that is really good to be able to visually see what's going on in that situation, which then allows the person making the emergency call to then, in one click, accept and start sharing live video with the emergency responder.
So the emergency services, let's first kind of go piece by piece through what you just mentioned there. Emergency services for like each town, each village would have to purchase this software, and is that correct?
So emergency services around the US have different software vendors, and so we're partnering with different software vendors that allow the emergency call centers to have access to this technology.
How do we know which ones have it and which ones don't?
We're making partnerships with many of these software vendors such that we have coverage of around 99% of the United States. So we're very confident that this feature is going to be available very widespread.
That is pretty incredible. And it's for Androids?
Yes, so all Android devices will have this feature starting today.
You know, for as often as there are jokes made between iPhone and Android users, this might be a game changer for that argument as well for Android users. So let's talk about some of the scenarios where this could be helpful. I mean, is it if someone needs like CPR, you're able to show and maybe they can walk you through what you need to do to save this person's life? Give me some scenarios where this could be useful.
Yeah, so CPR is a great example. One of the hardest things in CPR is for the emergency call taker to know that you're performing CPR correctly and actually making the correct levels of compressions. And so this technology has already been proven to be able to actually really help in the ability for the emergency call taker and the public safety to know that you're doing it correctly. And so we do believe that this should be able to save lives in scenarios like CPR.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think of, I mean, essentially like being a reporter, the live reporter who is there on the scene explaining what's taking place and having someone walk you through what to do to care for whoever's there or help yourself in that, you know, moment of emergency as well. All right, so there's a single tap. The emergency services responder would then send you a link or so, and you would tap on it and it would pop up. Is that right?
Yeah, so the emergency call taker would make the initial decision of whether it's a relevant scenario to be requesting live video from you, whether it's safe and those kind of things. They are trained to know the scenarios that are best. They will press a button on their UI, and then that will effectively show a dialog that pops up directly on the user's Android phone. So there's no links to click, there's no apps to open. It's built into your Android phone, so it's just one tap, and it will just work.
What does it say to you that we've come this far where you can live stream from your camera in emergency situations?
I think it's amazing. I think this is going to really unlock so many scenarios for public safety to be able to help our users and people better. And so it's really exciting, like the amount of the other scenarios that could also be helped by this. Like, we also know wildfires are a really good potential for this technology because, you know, when there's wildfires starting to go on, users just really struggle to convey that. And in a world where it's so easy to share with your friends images about, you know, via texting apps and things like that, it's great to see that this kind of technology is now going to be coming to emergency response, which is hopefully going to help save lives.
And I would also think it would help in the judicial process if there's some type of crime, because it would have a snapshot of what actually happened instead of depending on someone who is in a fearful state having to explain it.
Yeah, exactly. It gives that better context to the emergency response, so that they can have more confidence in the kind of help that the user's going to need for their given emergency.
All right. On the flip side, whenever we talk about technology, there are always concerns. So let's kind of walk through a few things. One, I think, would be the obvious, and that would be the privacy aspect of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So this feature is encrypted by default, and it's always in full control of the person making the emergency call, whether they want to accept or deny this particular request. It's also possible to, at any point, stop sharing the live video and stop. And so if in scenarios where it's safe to do so. So yeah, it's really important to us that it is encrypted, and so it's a good, safe solution for users.
Is it recorded and saved to your phone, or is it saved in some type of way?
It won't be saved to your device, and on the emergency response side, that will be based on local laws.
What about like a cloud or something like that?
Depending on the local laws of the region in which you're in, it may be stored by the emergency services for purposes.
And what about shared? I again would think that people would be concerned about whether their information would be shared. Information, be it what they're putting in or what is seen in maybe their homes or something.
The user is always in full control of when they do not want to share their live video. So in scenarios where users may not feel people may not feel comfortable in sharing live video, they always have the option to say no.
What would you say this is comparable or builds on? What is it comparable to or builds upon that we may have already had, but this kind of takes things to a new level?
Yeah, exactly. I think we're seeing amazing advances in technology for helping keep people safe. Android has been investing heavily in making amazing features for years now. We've had car crash detection, helping users, helping people when they're in a car crash. Their phone will help call emergency services on their behalf. We've launched other features too, like satellite SOS, so in those hard to reach places. And I think we're trying to build this peace of mind for our users. And this is just one piece of the puzzle of helping users when they're in a kind of scenario where they're probably really desperately needing help, full of adrenaline. We're just making it easier for users for people to get the help that they need. Yeah,
very good comparison with like something like an OnStar or something like that, but actually being able to see what's happening where you are. Really incredible stuff here, and like we said, this could save a life for sure. Anything else that you would like people to know about accessing it, or what they need to know moving forward if they ever need to use it?
So the great thing about this feature is it's going to be available for all Android phones with Google Play services, and most phones will be supported, anything Android 8 onwards. And so people won't have to do anything. They don't need to install anything. They don't need to set anything up. And so when they when they make an emergency call, the emergency call center, the 911 center, will know how to use this technology to help the person making the call. And so really for the great thing for you is there's nothing to actually to do, and hopefully this technology is really going to help save lives in scenarios when you need it, and it'll just work seamlessly. There won't be anything to click and set up.
Well, that's the hope and the wish. Thank you so much for your time and giving us this information about the Android Emergency Live Video feature that has launched today.
Thanks.
Take care. 2:15 right now. Let's take a quick break. 2:17 right now, and it's not often that we really know what all is inside of our furniture, maybe even that we think about what all is inside of our furniture. But for sure, for many of us, from time to time, we're like, I need to get rid of this old furniture, bring in something new. This might add to your list of reasons why. Apparently, foam-containing furniture that may be in your home can have a hidden source of harmful flame retardant exposure now. Robin Dodson, who is an associate director of research operations and a research scientist with the Silent Spring Institute, is joining me now to talk about this new study. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're talking about flame retardant classes here and chemicals. Walk us through this updated information, because I feel like when we discussed even having you on the show, I thought back to like my grandmother's one room in her home when she was alive that had all of the plastic laid on top of the furniture. And so many of us from like, the 70s and 80s remember that one room that you just couldn't go in. But so if that room is still sitting there, there could be many issues with the furniture.
Yeah, so because of flammability standards that were in place starting in the mid-70s up until about 2013, many of the couches that we find in our homes had added flame retardants. What that means is they were chemicals that were specifically added to slow down fire if it started. And that was a kind of at a standard level meant to try to, increase fire safety. Unfortunately, those flammability standards were shown to be ineffective. So we were dumping a whole bunch of chemicals into our couches during that time period that were shown to be ineffective in their intended use. And those chemicals eventually made their way into our homes and into the dust and into our air.
Oh my. Now, I immediately think chemicals. What are the types of issues that we could be plagued with from having those in the air in our homes?
Yeah, for these kind of chemicals, these flame retardant chemicals, especially these chemicals that were called polybrominated diphenyl ethers, or PBDEs, we're particularly concerned because once they get out of the product to which they're added, they find their way into dust into our homes. And I don't know if you've ever seen a small child. My daughter, when she was small, would sit on the floor, put things into her mouth. And as a result is that we're particularly concerned about children's exposure to chemicals that might be found in house dust. And that is the case for these flame retardant chemicals. They're getting out of the couches, they're making their way into the dust, and especially children, young children, are being exposed.
Yeah, and if they're exposed, what are some of the issues they could have?
Yeah, so for example, for these PBDE flame retardants that I mentioned, studies have shown decreases in IQ, so it impacts neurological development in children. Some of these chemicals have also been associated with cancer concerns as well. Yeah, that immediately jumped into my mind. And I feel like, there are just so many different things, because we think about the same types of issues, even for like paint from that time period that could be in homes from that time period. Yeah, unfortunately, we're still learning a lot about what chemicals can be found in our homes broadly. And I've spent my research career collecting samples and trying to really understand where these chemicals are coming from. And so I guess this is trying to understand a little bit about the impact of furniture on the conditions inside of our home. But we also need to think about any of those big surface areas in our house, our walls, our floors. Like, what are we using? What materials, what furnishings are we using in those spaces that could be releasing some chemicals of health concern? Yeah. And so someone would say, all right, what do I do with this information? Like, I can't just sell my home and, leave today type of thing. So what are some of the things that people should do if you can't exit the situation immediately? Yeah, so I want people to realize that this is occurring in everybody's home, and unfortunately, but there are a couple of very simple, highly effective things that can be done. First of all, these chemicals like to hang out in dust, so the best thing you can do is to keep dust levels low. So what that means is vacuuming regularly with a vacuum with a HEPA filter, which captures those particles, wiping down surfaces, particularly where children might be touching. And then we also say clear the air, ventilate, maybe use an air filter, a filtration device. All of those are pretty simple things and can go a long way for reducing chemical exposures inside the house.
Yeah, and how do we know if we've reached like a toxic level of exposure?
Yeah, that's really tricky because there aren't any standards except for lead. There aren't any standards, health-based standards for us to say, well, if you're above this level, we're concerned. If it's below, we're not. It's just, there's no regulatory mechanism for that to happen. So instead, we operate on the kind of, if it's there and if you're concerned about your exposures to the chemicals, there are things that you can do. We do know that people are, the range over which people are exposed is quite large. And so we know that there are things that must be working. Some people have low levels, some people have higher levels. So those who have higher levels might just want to, take a couple of these simple, effective steps to try to reduce their exposures.
Are you getting positive reaction from like furniture makers who maybe need to change the way they're doing things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been studying these flame retardants for a long time. And I do think that there are some manufacturers who see this as a real opportunity to create healthier furniture that do not have added flame retardants. So the good news here, because of changes in flammability standards, that you can today buy upholstered furniture like your couch that do not have added flame retardants. And the key is to flip it over, look at that tag on the bottom, and it should say whether or not this product does or does not contain added flame retardants. And there are many options out there in the marketplace, and a lot of companies are seeing this as a kind of a marketing advantage and providing opportunities for consumers.
Yeah. Is this something we also need to take into consideration, like if you buy secondhand, if you go to certain places for secondhand furniture?
Yes, unfortunately, pretty much any upholstered furniture, any couch manufactured before 2014 likely has these added flame retardants in them. And so this can be a real concern when we're thinking about secondhand furniture.
Yeah. Interesting study here. And there are just so many different things from a level of contaminants that we are introduced to on a regular basis that we all have to in some way keep in mind. But at the same time, it's hard not to be overwhelmed by the million things that could be causing some type of issue now or in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of just one of these, like, you can't tackle it all. So there's a couple of things like, vacuuming and keeping dust levels low actually reduces your exposure to many different chemicals. So that one act can really go a long way. So we really encourage people not to get frustrated, throw out their old couch, rather than kind of take a perspective that what are the things that I can do today that can take steps in the right direction to try to reduce my exposure to chemicals that we find inside.
I like that approach. What are the things that I can do today? Really, that's like a good approach to life. Not worrying about everything later. What can I do today?
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on the show here, Dr. Dodson.
You're welcome. Nice to have you.
Happy holidays to you.
Thank you.
2:26, everyone. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. 2:28 right now. Don't want to waste much time. Let's just take you right here to a special moment on Capitol Hill where we are seeing the Congressional Menorah lighting ceremony.
But we have to keep trying and not give up. Thanks for the encouragement, but there's a lot of work. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Schumer had a hard 3:30 on the Senate side, but Leader Jeffries is here with us, and what I do want to say is one thing. I don't get involved in their opinions on political issues. That's not my role. But one thing I will say is the two gentlemen to my left are strong and perhaps the best friends of Israel and the Jewish people either side of the aisle has ever seen. So I'd like to have a round of applause for them there. And one more sentence. I do want to say, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, I'm a registered independent, but I do want to say as a Jewish American, or an American Jew, however you phrase it, that I go to sleep easier at night knowing that at the helm of our nation and this institution of Congress are people who recognize the value we give this nation. So I think that that's important to remember. And thanks, Mr. Speaker, despite all the difficulty, for making it here today.
Sure. Thank you, Rabbi, and I apologize for my being a little tardy. I was whipping votes in the back room. We got it done, and I'm really grateful. This is the third annual...
It's really beautiful to see again this moment on Capitol Hill. Obviously, we hear a lot about one side of the aisle or the other side of the aisle, kind of pointing fingers at the other, fighting over any number of things. But there was the moment where you saw House Speaker Mike Johnson and Leader Hakeem Jeffries having just a banter, laughing and smiling. And take a picture, put it in your mind, and hold on to that. beautiful to see during this holiday time. Again, this was the Congressional Menorah Lighting Ceremony. And just to bring things back here to Chicago, the Grand Menorah Lighting Ceremony will be at 5:40 p.m. on December 16th at Daley Plaza. That's hosted by the Chicago Jewish Alliance. They'll be having that Hanukkah celebration there with live music and all of those things that go along with it. And of course, Hanukkah just around the corner as we get ready for that official lighting of the menorah that will happen here in our area. But the official kickoff of Hanukkah is on December 14th. So great things that are happening in our area and throughout the country as everyone gets in the festive spirit right now, and just wonderful to see people getting along. It's just always so great to see. Even green on the screen when it comes to the big board today. We have been taking a look at this. Usually we don't go to it multiple times during Chicago Live, but today it's important. Look at that. Up over 600 points right now, the Dow Jones at this point in time. Why? Because the investors are reacting to the 1/4 percentage point that the federal chair just announced. Another rate cut that we have here, the 3rd rate cut that was approved today, now to about 3.5 to 3.75%. It is the lowest in more than 3 years. Was it a unanimous vote? No, but it happened. And so we have our 3rd rate cut of the year. They're only forecasting 1 for next year thus far, but this is the 3rd for this year. So we're seeing the investors really go crazy here in a good way to see a lot of green on the screen as we get ready for the day to close. It will hopefully close in the green. They had been anticipating that this rate cut was coming, even though there had been no official signal that it was actually going to happen. But today it was made official with Federal Reserve Board Chair Jerome Powell standing before us for a press conference that we took live right here on Chicago Live to announce that 3rd rate cut of another 1/4 percentage point for the year. All right, it's 2:35 right now. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. .237 right now, and there is a new, I'll say pretty provocative study that's out there that suggests that in the growing online grocery market, okay, where everyone is like clicking on things to have it delivered to their home, that, you know, you would expect if we're ordering from the same place, the same time, the same item, we would have the same price. But it suggests that's not always the case. We have the managing director of the Policy and Advocacy for Groundwork Collaborative, Liz Pancotti, who is joining me now to talk a little bit about this study and the feedback that you're getting from it. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
In a place like Chicago, I don't know many people who don't at some point in time use something like an Instacart or some other way of getting their groceries delivered. So first and foremost, let's kind of back up and talk about why you decided to do this type of study.
We were really looking at the rise of different pricing techniques that companies are taking to be able to use, especially these AI-powered technologies and algorithms to, no longer set prices at kind of the result of supply and demand market forces, but really to use customer data or real-time information to adjust prices in a much more rapid sense. And there is no company kind of at the forefront of that more than Instacart. A couple of years ago, the company acquired a technology firm called Eversight, which had patented this technology to be able to use dynamic pricing, which is really real-time updates to pricing levels to see what customers are willing to pay and update in real time. And so what Eversight does is it essentially runs experiments on customers in real time. So you might log in at the same time as me, and we are both ordering, before a snowstorm, a round of groceries for our family. But your price can be, in our study, we find as much as 7% different from my total basket price. And we found items range up to 23% different for the same item at the exact same time from the exact same store.
Oh my goodness. That is tremendously different. Have you gotten a response from Instacart?
We have gotten a response from the company who does not deny our findings. They do confirm that they do run these experiments on their customers. And in fact, I know you were just showing the Dow Jones, which is in the green today, but we've actually seen their stock price jump down 5% over the last day in light of this news. The front page of the New York Post, the front page of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal are all covering this study. I think consumers are really upset. It really shows that while right now, Americans are struggling to afford the basics like groceries, a 7% price difference can mean more than $1,200 more a year in grocery costs for families, and they just can't afford that. And I think consumers are really upset about the unfairness and the fact that they're being used as guinea pigs.
And the fact that it's not transparent.
That's right. I mean, we were able to actually, the way we conducted our experiment was we put folks in a Zoom meeting, and at the same time they shopped for all of these items and then uploaded the prices they faced. But actually the most fun part of our experiment was when, the folks who participated, they would put in the Zoom chat what their total basket price was. And everyone was so upset that they got charged, $3 or $4 or $5 more than the same person in that Zoom room. It was actually quite a competition. And even in those smaller settings, we saw people be so annoyed that, your neighbor or your mom pays a different price for the same groceries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in them looking for new pricing practices, are they looking for like how much would people be willing to pay? So if we, let's test out a couple of people. Is that what they're looking for?
Yeah. So what they do is they basically run a test. What we find typically between 2 and 5 prices for most items. In our experiment, we found more than one price for nearly 75% of the items that we tested. So what they would do is they would show maybe you for a box of Cheerios, $3.99 for that box. They would show me maybe $4.99. And if I was willing to pay $4.99, they might adjust the typical price up to $4.99, knowing that they can charge customers more without seeing drops in demand. I think, what this kind of shows is that this is the base level of how companies are using this technology. And what we have seen other companies tease or start to roll out in pilot manners, not quite Instacart yet, but we see that they could be using personal information to charge you exactly what they know you will pay. So if you have a favorite cereal or a favorite pint of ice cream that you buy every week at the grocery store, you might be willing to pay 50 cents, $1, $2 $2 more for that item. But if I never buy that pint of ice cream, I might not be willing to pay that extra dollar. And what we could see on the horizon is, companies like Instacart, but many others, using that personal information and lots of data about you as a consumer to charge personalized pricing. And so rather than, a 7% difference on something small, you could see much larger differences depending on all of the information that they have about you.
So Instacart says, just as retailers have long tested prices in their physical stores to better understand consumer preferences, a subset of only 10 retail partners, ones that already apply markups, do the same online via Instacart. These limited, short-term, and randomized tests help retail partners learn what matters most to consumers and how to keep essential items affordable.
Instacart also says that these price differences are, quote, negligible, but I just don't find a $1,200 a year negligible. I mean, that is $100 a month for a family. That is the difference between, you paying the water bill, you paying your car insurance, or maybe buying your kid an EpiPen that they really need. Instacart also said to us that Target, one of the retail partners that we look at, when we talk to Target and to Instacart, Target says we have no formal relationship with Instacart. And Instacart came back and said, oh, that's actually true. What we do is we go online and we scrape the information for their pricing data. We upload it into Instacart, and then we do the experiment for our own markups. Target actually has nothing to do with it. And since we contacted them about this, they allege that they have actually ended that experiment. So we've kind of caught them into a couple of somersaults trying to twist their answers in response to our experiment.
Yeah, because I would be interested in wondering just that. Like, okay, is it just an Instacart issue, or is it the retailers that are on there? I mean, is there some type of agreement that they're able to do something like this? So you're finding that maybe even if there was, they're getting rid of it.
That's right. And we find in Instacart's marketing materials, they advertise this as a huge advantage of their platform. They are really bragging to both investors that make money off of this and their retail partners that this is one of the thing that sets them apart as a technology company. And in fact, in the Midwest, Schnucks, a local grocery retailer, is experimenting with digital price tags in stores that Instacart is helping them pilot, called carrot tags, where in real time they can adjust the price of, maybe an umbrella on a day that it is raining, or toilet paper ahead of when we all got sent home for the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So I think this is really just a taste of what's to come in pricing technology schemes from companies.
And when you hear something like this, you definitely wonder, what is it based on? Like, who are the guinea pigs?
They are all of you. If you have ever bought your groceries off of Instacart, they have information about you. And it's very possible that at the exact time you were buying your groceries or ordering chicken noodle soup if you were sick home with your kid, that they were running experiments on you to really find out exactly how much they can squeeze the juice out of you for more profits.
Are they looking at zip codes?
We do find in Eversight, that technology firm that Instacart acquired, that they are using in their patent applications. They do talk about different information about customers that they use. Of course, discriminating on customers based on demographic factors like race and gender is not permitted under the law, but there are lots of other behavioral features of customers that they have data on, especially for customers who, if you go on Instacart and buy your groceries every week, they know a lot about your purchasing history and the things you like to buy. We do not, in our study, find evidence of any particular either demographic factor or kind of behavioral factor from what we could observe. But, Instacart and other companies, Delta earlier this year teased that they were going to be rolling out this personalized pricing. And then after so much backlash, actually had to roll that back. And so what we find is this is really just the kind of the first step in this dynamic pricing or personalized pricing. And what could be coming down the pike is surveillance pricing, where information about you as a customer is being used to charge you more.
That is scary stuff, but we appreciate your hard work and exposing it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, you take care. About 2:48 right now. It's mind-boggling stuff. Not that we can't fathom it happening, but just to know and actually see that it is happening is really troubling. Let's take a break. Let's regroup, and we'll be right back. $2.50, everyone, as we kind of come to the end of this 2 o'clock hour here. We have a conversation with the Illinois Endangered Species Protection Board. They've just released their list of endangered and threatened species. Joseph Kath, who is a program manager with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, is joining me now. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so it's an annual list that you all put out?
No, I work for the DNR, for the Endangered Species Program within the DNR, and the Endangered Species Protection Board is actually a separate entity from any state agency. It is a board, and its members are appointed by the governor. So the DNR works in conjunction with the board, and every 5 years, a new threatened and endangered species list is published. And the new list just became effective October 31st.
October 31st. All right. So not too much time to kind of digest all of it, but I'm sure for those of you all who do this work, were there any surprises on the list for you?
I think people would be very surprised to learn that our list actually contains 513 species that are classified as either state endangered or state threatened. Of those 513 species, there are 175 animals and 338 plants. So it's about a 60-40 split between plants and animals. And again, when I tell folks that the list is over 500 species just here in Illinois, they actually find that quite shocking.
It is. Yeah, you would think just a few, especially when you're being state specific, not 500. So obviously we don't have time to go over all 500, but who are some of the new additions, or who has come to a point where now they don't need to be on the list?
Right, and that's always good when we can remove plants and animals from that list, but inevitably we remove species, but we also add species. So this go around, we were actually able to remove a total of 8 species. And of those 8, there were 2 snakes, 2 insects, and 4 plants. But on the other hand, we added a total of 38 species, 21 insects, 12 plants, 1 crayfish, and 4 fish, excuse me. So we removed 8, but we added 38.
Wow. All right. Well, we do have time to go over the 8. Who was removed?
Sure.
Who's doing well?
Who's doing well? 2 snakes in particular. Well, let's see. These were removed from the list, but there's a caveat there. They were removed from the list not because they are considered recovered. They were all removed from the list because they're no longer found here in the state of Illinois.
Oh, very interesting.
After decades and decades of surveys, we determined that these species just no longer exist in the wild here in the state of Illinois. So they came off the list, but for a very sad reason, not because we did something good and recovered them, but because they're no longer found here in the state.
Now, could it be that they moved as like a warming pattern in the world, that they found maybe a place that works better for them? Is it that type of thing, or that?
Not with the species that we removed. Their home ranges are rather small. A lot of that has to do with just basic habitat loss and habitat destruction. The habitat that these species relied on basically no longer exists here in Illinois. We can only do so much to protect and manage habitat, and as you can imagine, almost anywhere there's incredible development pressure, other kinds of human-made pressure like that, and just with loss of habitat and habitat degradation, these species are just no longer able to survive here in Illinois.
Oh, yeah, that's a sad update there. You think 8 removed, you're like, oh, yay, but that's not a good thing. All right, so of the 38 that were added, and again, most people, we were saying this, like most people think animals, not plants when you talk about endangered species in the state. But of the 38 that were added, give us a couple that maybe rise to the top for you.
Sure, and I will tell you, of the 38 that were added, a very large portion of those were pollinators, specifically bees. Many species of bees that are native to the Midwest, native to Illinois, were added to the 2025 list. And essentially, these were added because their populations in Illinois remain extremely low, and the pressure on their habitat that they need to survive is extremely high. So we realized that through scientific analysis, scientific evidence, that it was our responsibility to place these species, particularly these pollinators, on the 2025 endangered species list.
And when you speak of their habitat, pressures on their habitat, are we talking about the growth from that standpoint as well, industrial type of pressures? And what are their habitats?
Sure. With many species, Illinois has many diverse habitats. We're very lucky in that sense. Illinois is the prairie state. We have prairies, woodlands, savannas, wetlands. Most of the species that were added to the list are really prairie, savanna, grassland dependent species because they are pollinators. They rely very heavily on flowers and flowering plants of native species. And again, just loss of that habitat and pressure on that habitat really has to do with human influence. Development, encroachment from population centers just continuing to grow. So we work very hard with an entire network of our statewide conservation partners to really identify those crucial habitat parcels and then do what we can to permanently protect and manage those parcels so they exist not only in perpetuity, but they exist so they can help these species survive in the long term.
This is all very interesting. Are there any that are native to the Chicago area? Any that are typically found right here?
Yes, and actually, the northeastern part of Illinois is probably the most biologically diverse as far as the number of endangered and threatened species in Illinois. which, is, you wouldn't think that, but it is. Some of the ones that are native to the greater Chicagoland area or the northeastern counties there, northeastern part of the state, you have the Heinz Emerald Dragonfly. The Heinz Emerald Dragonfly is not only listed at the state level, but it's listed as a federally endangered species. The Heinz Emerald Dragonfly is dependent, its life cycle is dependent upon very high quality wetlands. We have things like the mud puppy, the lake sturgeon, a fish known as the Cisco. These can all be found in Lake Michigan. Things like the piping plover. Many folks in the Chicagoland area are familiar with piping plovers. Right, exactly. And there are portions along shorelines along Lake Michigan and Cook County and going up into Lake County that are absolutely crucial nesting grounds for the piping plover. So that's something that the entire Chicago metro area should really take some pride in. We always want to educate folks and let them know truly what's literally in your own backyard.
And are there other projects of note to save some of these endangered species?
Probably the best. We have projects going on all over the state, including in the northeastern collar counties, to conserve, to protect, to recover both endangered plants and animals. The one thing that I always try and recommend to folks, and with Chicago being so diverse in just its culture and the number of different organizations that are available to the public, there are probably 3 prime conservation organizations in the Chicago area that people can volunteer with. There's Chicago Wilderness, the Chicagoland Environmental Network, and then the Nature Conservancy. You can easily find these just by doing an internet search, and they are always looking for volunteers. These are conservation groups literally in your own backyard that do tremendous work in helping to manage, restore, and recover endangered and threatened species here in Illinois.
Well, thank you for getting us our marching orders here to find someone to connect
You're
with
welcome.
to try to save some of these poor pollinators, especially that are on the list, but maybe others as well. Thank you so much. And let me ask you just on a final note, how do you all go about tracking these?
We conduct a very regimented series of field studies, field research, and that's often very intense, where we may actually capture animals, where we may place radio tags or radio collars on the animals to track where they go, to learn more about their habitat. The studies, as you can imagine, are very species specific, but what we do is strictly driven by science, and by using the scientific method, we certainly do our best to discover what we can do to conserve and manage these species, to keep them on Illinois' landscape for generations in the future to enjoy and just to take advantage of and learn from.
Joseph, thank you so much for joining me today and for what you and others do on a regular basis to make our state a little better.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. Just after 3 o'clock right now in our final hour here on Chicago Live. We're going to take a break and we'll figure out where we're going from here. All right, it's just about 3:05, everyone. Let me kind of lay out where we're going here in this final hour of Chicago Live. Before we get out of here, we are going to listen to a phenomenal youth choir in our area. We are in the holiday spirit, full steam, so we hope that we're going to be able to bring you there live coming up right around 3:45, right around that time period. We're also going to talk with our friends at Loaves Fishes. They just got a $5 million award. It's going to be able to help them to do wonderful things in our community. So we're going to check in with them about getting this new influx into their coffers there to be able to help more people out. But first here, we're also going to, right around 3:15 or so, we're going to usher in Tia Ewing. She has a special that is airing tonight, and we want to get the preview before it airs. We want to talk to her about that. It is a special that will hopefully save some lives, quite honestly, by really talking about some things that are going right and wrong on our roadways throughout the state and in the city of Chicago. But we want to start right now with it's kind of like one of those conversations where you're like, how did we end up here type of conversation. So U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has now ordered diplomats to return to using Times New Roman font in official communications, laid down the law. If you're going to be typing, which all of us do on a regular basis for the State Department, you have to use Times New Roman. Charles Nix, who is Monotype's Senior Executive Creative Director, is joining me now to talk about the personalities behind fonts that we use. Thank you so much for your time.
It is my pleasure, Anita. I live in a very sort of rarefied place of font obsession, so it's great to have somebody to talk to about it.
Font obsession. I don't know if there's many of you, but clearly this is a thing. This is a thing. So I was today years old, as the kids say, when I learned that this was a thing. All right, so what are your thoughts on Times New Roman?
I think Times New Roman's a classic typeface. It has a long pedigree that sort of dates back to the earliest days of Roman typefaces. Although it was created in the early 20th century by the Monotype Corporation in London for the London Times newspaper. It's so rugged in its construction that it's really stood the test of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, Marco Rubio, Secretary Rubio, is not the first to say, hey, I want a standard font for everyone within the State Department. Antony Blinken switched to, is it Calibri?
Yes, it is Calibri.
I probably know it when I see it, but don't say that often.
Precisely. I think this is the case with a lot of typefaces. I constantly am asked how to pronounce Neue Helvetica, and Bedoni and lots of other typefaces that people see in font menus but don't necessarily, say out loud every day.
Yeah, exactly. So when we're going to type something and it comes up, you just go with, this looks nice, I'll use this one. You don't really know the name of that font and especially how to pronounce it. But why do you think it would be important to someone to have a standard font for an entire department?
Well, I mean, this goes back to even pre-typographic times. Under Charlemagne, the monk Alcuin sort of standardized the writing system, which is the sort of basis for all the typefaces that we use, including Times Roman. And it was a way of organizing a sort of brand identity for the Holy Roman Empire. And so brands do it every day. We help guide them, and they sort of publish their brand guidelines, and people try to adhere to them so that the voice that you're hearing, the visual voice, is the same throughout the brand. And so the U.S. government and other governments are no different. They, establishing a unifying typographic voice is a way of indicating to somebody that this is the same group speaking to you. This is a person from a larger group that's speaking to you.
But with something like Times New Roman, I'm thinking, it's so common.
It is so common. And I think the conversation here between Times New Roman and Calibri is very much about the contrast between them and less about the sort of uniqueness of the typefaces. So Calibri is a sans serif typeface, which means it has no feet. And Times Roman is a serif typeface, which means it does have feet. And one is seen as a sort of much more modern, contemporary representation of typographic form, and one seen as a more traditional one. Both are equally legible, but it's the connotation of the form that I think is being concentrated on here. In terms of legibility, which is the ability of something to be read or comfortably read, they're about the same, but it is what people are used to reading that makes a typeface more or less legible. So I think if any of us looked at our phones or any screen that we're surrounded by daily, most of the type on those screens is going to be sans serif typefaces. So we've become very accustomed to seeing type in sans serif on screens, and so therefore it's more legible. In printed documents and books, serif typefaces dominate. It's just, I don't think many of us can remember ever picking up a novel and seeing it set in a serif typeface. So printed books, the expectation is that those typefaces will be serifed. So it makes them much more legible in that circumstance. But by and large, people are able to read both equally well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Secretary Rubio says this is to restore decorum and professionalism. What does our font say about us? The font that we choose, what does it say about us?
It's a great question. I say that fonts are our visual voices, and for a brand or for a company, a typeface is actually speaking even when you're sleeping. It's something that's sort of carrying through its form the ideas that that live on top of the message that you're sending. So to put that in another way, I mean, what I'm saying to you right now in any other voice would be different. My voice is uniquely mine. And if we choose a typeface with intention, it conveys something on top of the actual language that we're reading. It's a sort of invisible gauze or visible gauze that exists between the intention of the writer and the reception of the reader. So that moment between two brains receiving information, and type lives at that place. So how we shape that moment actually has an impact on the way that people receive the information.
This is such a deep dive I did not expect to have today. Or ever.
Ask a font nerd.
Yeah. So apparently Calibri was chosen because there are some people with certain visual disabilities who can see it better. Is that right?
There were a number of reasons cited in the original movement towards Calibri a couple of years ago under Blinken. The first was clearer letter forms. So, and again, you can find some evidence that, especially on screens, that typefaces like Calibri promote ease of readability. There was another aspect of it at that time that had to do with the ability not only of people to read the text, but the text itself to be read into readers. And I'm going to unpack that. I'm sorry, it sounds really convoluted.
You've gone way over our heads.
Some people who have trouble reading or have seeing can take documents and feed them into an OCR machine, and it will speak the words to them. Mm-hmm. And in those machines, it was easier before recent developments for them to read sans serif typefaces over serif typefaces. So it was a dual intention. One, to sort of capitalize on the simplicity or simplification of the letter forms in a typeface like Calibri, and two, to make sure that the devices that were reading out text to visually challenged people were more accurate.
Do we have all of the fonts that we'll ever see, or could a new font still be developed?
No, everyone has a voice, everyone has a point of view, and there are new typefaces being developed all the time. And with the introduction of generative AI and artificial intelligence more generally, we're about to see an explosion of typefaces, I imagine, that will rival anything that we've seen thus far. And right now we're living through a time of typographic and font plenty, the likes of which we've never known in civilization ever. The closest corollary is at the beginning of the 20th century when there was a big explosion of typefaces, again, thanks to type technology. The beginning of this century saw the same thing when we introduced digital tools into typesetting and font production. And now with AI, I'm just imagining an incredible plenty of new typefaces that will be developed in the next 5 to 10 years.
I have to know, what did you study in school?
So, my checkered past begins with being the son of a printer. I grew up in Akron, Ohio. My father was a printer, and so I was around type from a very early age. And I studied art and design at the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art in New York City. And there I met a lot of people who, well, quite a few people who are interested in typography, but a few experts who really changed the trajectory of my life by letting me know that there were people who actually made typefaces for a living and who were typographers. And I knew at that point that that's what I wanted to do.
I have talked about the interest rate cut, property taxes, all different types of things today. And my mind may have been blown the most from this conversation.
When I'm in Chicago, you and I can get together and I'll try and diagnose what typeface fits your voice, Anita.
You know what? That is a promise that I hope you will keep. I need to know which one fits me specifically.
You got it.
All right. You take care. Oh, there's something, everyone has their thing. I love, finding out the thing that people are passionate about. And even if it's not what you're passionate about, it's just interesting to really understand what it is, learn something new every day type of mentality. Let's take a quick break, cool off our brains, and then come back. All right, 3:18 right now. Thanks so much for staying with us. We have Tia Ewing, who is here right now, previewing a special that airs tonight. What are you working on here?
So this is, and I'm sure you've experienced it, you're sitting in traffic, it's rush hour, you have somewhere to be, you wish the traffic would move, and you see a car come on the emergency lane and they get to go way ahead of you. You've been waiting patiently and you're like, where's the police? How are they getting away with this? And the next thing you know, no police comes, there's no sirens or anything. This is a sting that is being done by the Cook County Sheriff's Department. They're using their drone that they just got at the end of August at the tune of $11 million. Before, they would have to borrow CPD's older drone that they had at the time, a drone from, I should say helicopter from Homeland Security, but this is their own. And so they're using it with traffic enforcement. They're using it for different criminal things that happen across the county where they need an eye in the sky situation.
So let's walk people through like the background on this in terms of how you were able to put this report together.
So initially they offered us to get in the helicopter. And I'm not gonna lie, that didn't sound like something that I wanted to do.
The things you do for the job.
So I was like, no, we're gonna pass on the helicopter and insurance purposes because we're on the job. You know, so that wasn't clear. So we had to do it from the ground. So what we did was we were very strategic. We used our own helicopter that we use at Fox 32 to kind of get video of their helicopter, the Sheriff's Department's helicopter in the air. And then the Sheriff's Department also gave us their video as they were doing this. So let me break it down. So they have a camera on the front of the drone. It's called a MX-10 camera. They have the ability to see you in your car scratching your chin. They can see you in your car sipping a Coca-Cola. It is that finite, that detailed, that kind of a camera with that kind of technology. They're using that in the air, and at the same time they have different officers with the Cook County Sheriff's Department on the ground, and they can say, hey, black Jeep coming your way, license plate 22, whatever, look out for it, it's coming right past you. And then that is when they pull that vehicle over. And in some cases, you're just giving a citation. In other cases, we were in a situation where they pulled somebody over, that person had an expired tag, so their license plate was expired, and so was their license. So that car was then towed because they're not supposed to be driving on the road anyway.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay, two things that pop out to me with something like this. One would be, does this then increase, did they talk to you about whether it increases the safety of officers?
Yes, it increases the safety of officers, tow truck drivers as well. If you have an emergency, maybe you have a flat tire, you have to get into emergency lane. These people are driving so fast sometimes that there is no way that they would be able to stop if they suddenly come upon you in that emergency lane. So this is creating safety for everyone on the road. And statistically, what's crazy about this, in one case, for example, that we point out, they did it for 3 hours, and I think they issued over 100 tickets in just 3 hours.
Wow.
So that shows you how many people are doing it. And it's all over. It doesn't matter the expressway. It doesn't matter which side of Chicagoland. Everybody's doing it.
Were there some specific areas, though, that they said, oh, no, if we park right here, park up right here, we know?
Rush hour, period. It does not matter where. Morning, noon rush too, and also evening rush. They know that they will catch somebody doing it. And in fact, we wanted video for our story, not solely from this on our own. My photographer, who lives in a completely different side of town from me, he recorded people doing it. I recorded people doing it. So we recorded videos on our own of people doing this. So it does not matter. This is happening all over. And in fact, they've been doing this. So the drone came online at the end of August. They started doing these stings, so to speak, in June when they didn't even have the helicopter. Between June and now, they have issued over 700 citations. So that shows you just how many people are doing this, and there's a lot of people. You get a ticket, you have to clean trash on the side of the road. It's not a game. This is serious. And I think people are shocked because they don't realize that a helicopter is watching.
Right,
you're not looking for that when you're trying to get somewhere.
So on that note, I know that in some parts of the country, maybe it's a legislative type of thing, I'm not sure, but in some parts of the country, when you are going to be monitored by or surveilled in some type of way, they have to post it along the highway to say you are being monitored.
Now they don't have that. But what I can tell you is that, so for example, if you're in your car and you're on your phone, they can see it, but they're not stopping you for that. They're stopping you for an infraction that they can also identify on the highway, so in the air and physically on the ground that they can see you doing.
Did they talk about privacy concerns?
No, we didn't get into that because one of the major things that they wanted to be clear about is that they're not using this camera outside of the realm of police work. So, like I said, if you're in your car and if you're in your car and you're on your phone and you're not supposed to be, they're not watching you, as you're on your phone. Now, if you commit a traffic violation, if you cut somebody off, if there's some type of crazy crash, they do use it for carjackings. So if there is an actual crime, yes, they are surveilling it.
Yeah. And then what is the turnaround time in terms of how long they can keep what they then catch? I mean, is it saved in their system for like 24 hours or 30 days?
So they do save it in their system and they download it. So they will keep it for a period of time longer than 30 days in the event that you want to argue. Maybe you want to say, well, I didn't do that. I want to take this to court. So they will keep it beyond 30 days. We didn't get into that in our reporting, but they do keep it just on record, just in case.
Very interesting stuff here. And did you see?
And somebody did say, they were like, I wasn't merging.
I was just about to ask that.
Yes, somebody did say that. And then we actually had them on camera. The chopper had them on camera. So then it's like, how can you dispute it?
It's kind of hard to argue. It's kind of like when you get that, like for the red light cameras.
That's
when you get it in the mail, you're like, well.
And sometimes you can see yourself. So I think this is one of those things. And back to the point about safety, which I think is really important in this. There have been serious accidents, and we kind of get into the statistics a little bit. There have been serious accidents across the country, not just here in Illinois, of people that are right in that emergency lane. They come upon somebody and they hit them, and it was no time to stop, no time to react, and the person's dead.
And then there's the aspect of it where you're hindering, because it's supposed to be used for emergency vehicles. So if someone needs them, you're hindering that.
And people do it like, they're almost like thinking maybe police might see me. Let me kind of, duck and hide in traffic. You'll see people get in traffic, get back in the emergency lane, get in traffic. So they almost like know. So this is going to be interesting to see how this shapes how we drive. In the city of Chicago, in Cook County, period, because they're not playing, man. When I was out there, I was like, I can't believe it was wild to see how many people were pulled over, how many people thought nobody was watching, and there's somebody watching.
Okay, so this is fairly new for them.
Fairly new. August 26 or 27 is when this rolled out.
Is it a pilot program?
This is not a pilot. Okay. This is going to be happening throughout the years to come. They do not alert you of when they're going to happen. They will happen on different expressways. We spend our time on the Eisenhower Expressway, but this is happening all over. And in fact, on my drive home, I've seen them do this. And so that's not the Eisenhower Expressway. So they're doing this anytime where there's a whole bunch of traffic, they probably are up.
I wonder if at some point people will start putting those on Waze. If you were able to see it, if people will start trying to give other people a heads up as well on that.
Yeah, what I really liked about not just this particular, this is a thing that I think, if you've ever sat in traffic, you're like, I can't believe this person. They deserve to pull them over, and it doesn't happen. But what I also liked about this is that they're using the cameras, for example, if they have to go look for a murder suspect and they know they're in this house, they're surveying the outside of the property to let the police officers on the ground know, like, hey, this person is running out the back door. It looks like they have a gun in their hand, because the camera is that finite to get down to the details. And to me, that is the stuff that really matters when it comes to having this technology. Sure, they can tell how fast you're going too on the highway. They're not using it for speed enforcement, but they can tell. There are some legalities with that, so they're not using it for that. But it can tell you, they can see your license plate. They know the make of the car. They know, obviously, the color of the car. And they can say, hey, and by the way, this is a woman. This appears to be a woman in the driver's seat, and there appears to be two kids, maybe not in a car seat, or should be in a car seat. So they can see all of those things.
And when you were pointing out like how it could help, just in terms of the officers, I would also think that every day that they go out, they don't know what they're going to be faced with. But anything that could tell them, there's so many conversations about like when to proceed with a chase, when to cut the chase off. off for the officer's safety, that it could help them quite a bit with that.
Interesting that you bring that up, because when they use it for carjackings, that is what they do. They watch sometimes not to chase the car, but to see where did the car stop, how many suspects got out of that car. So then when police do decide to go in or go track the car, tow the car, whatever, they know what they're walking into. So it's also used for safety. Not just because I know when we initially posted this story some time ago now in the summer, people were like, this is just a money grab. But then a lot of people were like, thank goodness, because like, it's crazy. And I mean, these cars are not going slowly past you. They're speeding like crazy, where you know they could potentially hit somebody. So I find it interesting. They've caught people and arrested people because they've had more than just, you know, this violation. Maybe they got up on the car, there was a gun, they had drugs, whatever. So they've arrested some people too. So we get into those numbers as well. But it was fun to do. I know that sounds crazy, but it was a fun story to tell, because I've been the person that had to sit there an hour. Meanwhile, Johnny come lately is blowing past me on the expressway. They get to go where they want to go, you know, maybe 15, 20 minutes, but I have to wait. Yeah. You should have to wait too.
Because you wanted to follow the law.
Yeah, or how about you leave home early?
Yeah.
So
there's that. Yeah. Okay, when do we catch your story?
So we are going to have a teaser to the story at 4:30. The entire story, which is 6 minutes plus long, is going to air at 5:30. The producer's laughing because I always make fun of myself and I say, no, it'll be 3 minutes. And then it turns out to be double that.
If it's worth it, it's worth it.
5:30 and then 9 o'clock tonight. And of course, it'll live on our website, fox32chicago.com.
All right, we'll make sure to check it out. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
In exposing what's going on out there.
We got to tell the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody, it's 3:30 right now. Thank you, Tia.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. $3:33 right now, and our friends at Loaves Fishes are always doing wonderful things, providing services to the community. And Mike Havala, the CEO, is joining me now to talk a little bit more about the big award that they just won. Congratulations to you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having us on this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
$5 million award from Endeavor Health. Just let's start with your reaction to it.
We are incredibly honored, incredibly excited. This is something that is so impactful to what we're doing here at Loaves Fishes, but also to the broader community as well.
So this is the largest and longest commitment yet from the Health Systems Community Giving Program. I think this is so important as more people look at hunger as a health emergency in the country.
Yes, absolutely. Food insecurity is a huge issue here, of course, in our area, but nationally as well. About 20% of children across the United States face hunger and are food insecure. So it's a very significant issue. And, food insecurity affects so many things in people's lives. It affects their physical health, affects their mental health, financial health. So it's a pervasive issue that is something that we're all collectively trying to address in a big, impactful way here.
And so let's talk about what you are going to do with the $5 million to have a greater impact.
Yeah, so the award, the $5 million, will go towards our Hub 2.0 project, and that project involves expanding our hub facility that's in Aurora, Illinois. We will be able to more than double the number of people that we're serving. Today, we're already serving about 10,000 people a week. We will also add a lot more cold storage, which is integral to what we do in providing healthy food to our clients. And then the expansion of our hub facility will also help us collaborate with a lot more organizations in our area. And working together, we know that we can accomplish a lot more than everybody working independently. So this grant from Endeavor Health is incredibly impactful, and again, just is such a benefit to our whole community.
Did you all have to apply for it? How were you chosen? How did you rise to the top?
Yes. Well, we did have to apply for it, yes, and it was a very intricate and detailed and thorough application and process. There was a lot of interaction with their team, asking questions, making sure they understood. And I know there are a lot of other organizations that did apply for it as well across the Chicagoland area. And so we are, again, just absolutely honored, thrilled, excited to win this award and be the recipients of this. And this is their first year that they've issued this specific award. So again, just absolutely honored.
Well, they have set the bar quite high now as to who to give this award to year after year. Talk a little bit about the timing of the award and how significant that is for you all.
Yeah, so the way the award works as far as a timing perspective, so it's $5 million in total. It's $1 million a year, each year for 5 years. And so it really helps support what we're doing with our Hub 2.0 project, and then some of the programs that are associated with that really over a longer period of time. So that's a very strong part of the impact of this award. Is it is a longer term type of award, and so it has extra value in that.
But what does it mean to receive it right now?
Oh yeah, so certainly, at this time when food insecurity is very hard, very high, it's the holiday times, and we see a lot of people in need, especially in the holidays. We provide many thousands of holiday meals to people, and so it being announced at this time in the year is just it's phenomenal timing. It really is.
And let's talk a little bit about what you all have going on for the holiday. Do you have some events coming up that you want people to know about?
Well, we have our holiday distribution to clients, and so clients can come and get a full holiday meal. And we really are supportive of families, of course, and we want people to be able to have those holiday meals with their families. We hear many stories of clients who don't have enough food, and they send their kids to a neighbor's house for the holidays for those meals. So people being able to provide those meals themselves for their families is just incredibly impactful at this time of year.
Tell us about who you serve. How do people become clients of yours? Is there a coverage area?
Yes. So we serve people in 4 counties, DuPage, Will, Kane, and Kendall County. So if you are a resident of one of those 4 counties and your income is at a low level where you qualify to receive these type of benefits for food and other things that we do, that's who we serve. So in those 4 counties, there's about 2.3 million people total population. And as I said, we serve about 10,000 people each and every week. The typical person that we serve, they are working people that often have multiple jobs, their families. And so, it's great that we're able to support those families and help them, especially when they hit hard times. And again, having Endeavor Health as a very, very impactful, important partner just adds fuel to what we're doing.
Yeah. Has your list of clients increased this year?
Yes, it has. So we're seeing, again, more people than ever before. And certainly with the headwinds that are out there with things like SNAP benefits being reduced and, ACA, things that are going on with that, as well as with Medicaid and just the economy in general. It's putting more pressure on people's finances, and people that may have been able to make ends meet a year ago find themselves struggling, and they need help, and we're here to help them.
And while we celebrate the $5 million award, and it is something to celebrate, the $5 million from Endeavor Health, we know that will only go so far. So you still need donations from other people, I'm sure, or help in other ways, volunteers. If people want to be of assistance in the way that they can, maybe they don't have $5 million to give you, but if they want to help or be of assistance in some way, what do they need to do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Every dollar matters. We get donations of $5 or $50 or $25, and it all adds up and it all makes a big difference. The easiest way to donate is simply just to go on our website, which is loaves-fishes.org, and you can make a donation directly on our website. People send in checks, people can donate stock, which we see a lot of this time of year as well. So there's many different ways that you can support the organization. And of course, people volunteering is always very helpful as well. Most of the work here is done by volunteers. And so we always need volunteers to help us out.
Mm-hmm. And maybe just on a final note, if people aren't familiar with Loaves and Fishes, and maybe they don't get the connotation, tell us how you all got your name.
Yeah, so we started about 41 years ago. And we started in the basement closet of a church, and from those very small and humble beginnings, the organization grew again over 41 years, and really as the need grew in the community, we've grown as well to try and meet that need.
Yeah, and this $5 million will take you into the next frontier. Thank you so much for your time. Happy holidays, and I hope that you are overwhelmed with more awards and people rushing out to help.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Happy holidays to you and everybody as well. Thank you.
Thank you. It's 3:42, everyone. We'll be right back, and hopefully we get some very talented youth on this show. All right, everyone. So our kids that I was talking about before we went to break, their school bus is actually a little delayed. We're still waiting to be able to talk with a representative, though, coming up shortly. But let's go to the big board. It is rare that we take the big board 3 times in our show, but we have each hour. Why? Because today is a significant day, and here's how things closed. Up almost 500 points here for the Dow after the Fed cut rates today. This was our 3rd cut for the year. This is the lowest at this point in time that it has been, the 3.5 to 3.75% rate. Right now, that's the lowest that it's been in about 3 years here. So there were plenty of gains on Wall Street here. The S&P 500 advanced about 0.7% to end the day. The NASDAQ increased, and at one point it was kind of stalled today, but it increased to 0.3%. So a lot of things going here based off of the Fed cutting the rate here. There were many things that they talked about in their press conference around 1:30 this afternoon. The Fed talking about the fact that it really is a reflection of a weakened jobs market, the result of them, cutting the percentage point there by another 0.25%. Then this was also the most divided that the committee has been in 6 years, with 9 of the governors saying, yes, go ahead, do the 0.25 point percentage that we got. And then there were 3 more who dissented to it. One of those who wanted to go even further to a 0.5 percentage point cut. But of course, that was more aggressive than the others wanted to go here. So again, we're seeing some movement here. Stocks ending the day in the green, which is what we like to see. And what was kind of predicted, they were given that indication, and we were kind of telling you about this for the last week, really. They were getting some type of indication, the investors, that there may be another rate cut point, even though Jerome Powell in September said he wasn't sure that there would be one. He didn't want to get people really optimistic about it. But in the last week, for sure, there had been some movement there that gave investors some type of confidence that maybe we were going to see what we actually got today, which was the 0.25 percentage point here that should help people, if you're in the market for a new house, new car, and things of that nature. Maybe that 0.25 percentage point, again, the lowest in 3 years, should help you out. But we do have Josh Hale, who is with us now. He is the CEO CEO of Big Shoulders Fund, and the representative to talk about the wonderful youth who are going to be doing great things today with their voices. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having us. We appreciate it.
So I see 11 Big Shoulders Fund schools are going to be participating in this caroling of commuters.
That is correct. We've been doing this for years. We have what lifts people's spirits during this season more than children singing holiday songs as they get on and off the trains. We know the commute can sometimes be jostling and troubling, but when they get off a train or just before they get on, they hear children singing and lifting their spirits is a tremendous gift. And we really think of it as a gift to Chicago. The city has given so much to our mission, to our schools, and invested so much in the incredible talented students that enter our schools in Chicago's South and West Side, that this is a gift back to the city that does so much to help so many.
I could not tell you in words how much I love this. So you're at the Ogilvie Transportation Center, then also Millennium Station. About how many students are going to be joining you?
All in from the 11 schools, hundreds of students will be singing throughout. In fact, this morning, my phone was exploding with text messages from so many friends and so many people that know about our mission who are getting off the train and taking pictures of the students and sending them saying, this is just what I needed today. And I heard you talk about the markets and, you know, sometimes those go up and down. Children are just up. It's always lifting our spirits.
Certainly, unless you're the parent that has to, you know.
This is true. As a fellow parent, I get it. But with other people's kids, it's all joy, especially when we talk about Chicago's children, the South and West Side of Chicago, where there's so much talent and so much opportunity. They're our future. And so that's something we can all get behind as parents.
We love to see them shine for sure, and we appreciate what you do to help them shine. So what were some of the songs that they've prepared for today?
You name a song, they sing it. In fact, I was trying to join the choir. However, I didn't make it past the band leaders, the choir set leaders. They said I need to work a little bit harder. But Jingle Bells and We Wish You a Merry Christmas and so many different songs that they are belting out. And some, old favorites as well, and also some cultural songs as well from the different communities across Chicago. So they really mix it up with different songs, and there's all sorts of activity. They're dancing, they're moving. So not only the joy of their sound, but also you just want to start dancing with them when they start singing.
And this was a full day's activity because they were also a part of the morning commute, right?
That's correct. How about let's give a big shout out to parents who got up super early with their kids to get them to the school, to get them the bus, to get them down here, as well as the principals and teachers who came along with them, and certainly the stars of the show, the students. They really did. And I think it is. It's a gift to the city that they all really commit to doing this here at Ogilvie and at Millennium Station, to be here to greet people as they come off the train, a little sleepy, just trying to get up. I tell you what, Dunkin' Donuts might have gotten less business today because the students were enough caffeine to get them all going.
You know what? I mean, people gathering, they may have gotten more business today because people were like, oh, let me grab my coffee and go see them.
Even better.
Yeah.
We're going to ask them for a donation now since we helped their business.
Right, exactly. And then maybe get sponsored next year. So.
That's right. Wait, there's actually a coffee company called Big Shoulders Coffee right here in Chicago. No affiliation with us, but there's a pitch. Maybe they'll be our partner next year. We'll give out coffee, music, and students singing. What could be better for Chicago?
I like your elevator pitch. I can tell you've been working on that one. So this is the 15th.
I'm working on a lot of things. I got a lot of work to do still.
This is the 15th consecutive year for this. Tell me how it got started and how it's changed over the years.
You know, I got to say, it was really the gentleman by the name of Jim O'Connor, who was the founding chairman of Big Shoulders Fund. He had been longtime CEO of Commonwealth Edison, and then really a civic leader involved in so many of the great projects, Millennium Park and the many cultural institutions, really always on the board and helping. And he was a founding director of chairman of Big Shoulders Fund. And he had the idea of really giving a gift back to the city. And what better way than to really showcase the students, the talent, and all the different wonderful, rich communities that make up Chicago. And so he said, why don't we endeavor to have children come down? And we reached out to the different departments that run these stations, and they couldn't have been more welcoming. And every year they welcome us back. And I'd like to think it, certainly because they find joy in it, but I also think that they hear, because we hear from so many of the commuters who say, gosh, this is such a gift. We love the students here. So Jim O'Connor, the founding chairman of Big Shoulders Fund, who did so much for the city, had this great idea. And I'm glad that he did, because I think we all find great joy in it. I love coming over and watching them. I love being part of it. In 1 year, they're going to let me sing with them. I got a lot of work to do on that, too.
You keep working on it. Yeah, maybe you'll get there.
There's great hope. There's great hope. I'm not sure that I'm making any progress, but there's great hope. Every new year, we is born with a little more hope.
What do the youth say? Because I feel like this is a win-win for everyone.
You know what's amazing, which is wonderful, is that the students, now that we've been doing this for so many years, they hear about it and they want to be part of it. They love coming down because, you know, a lot of them enjoy performing and they love singing, but also when they're down there, when they're down here, so many people come up to them, thank them, ask them about their studies, about their school, about their hopes, their dreams, and they end up having conversations. And so after I've been watching this for so many years, I see that engagement taking place. And so the students really want to come back down for it. They love it. And I can see why they enjoy it so much. And maybe it's also because they get to miss out on a little school.
No,
I think that,
no, not that at all.
Is that they had to get up super early, like 4:30 in the morning, to be down here.
Sometimes that's worth it if you get to miss school, I'm sure, for the kids.
Yeah. I was always interested in that.
Tell us about the Big Shoulders Fund.
Big Shoulders Fund is a nonprofit here in Chicago. We're actually coming up on our 40th anniversary. And we were founded by a group of civic and business leaders inspired by the late Cardinal Bernardine to support Catholic schools in under-resourced communities on Chicago's south and west side. Communities rich in talent, but have been for far too long disinvested in. And so we invest in the school, we invest in the students, we invest in the teachers, and we partner with them, really listening to them to hear what their needs are, whether that's professional development for teachers, whether that's opportunities for students for enrichment before school, after school, or in the summer, or it's helping them along the trajectory of their education, transitioning from 8th grade to high school or high school to college, and even supporting them into college. So we have a network of 90 schools that we work with, 25,000 children. 80% are identify as Black and Latino, and just over 70% are low income. What they are most, though, is unbelievably ambitious and talented. We see that our students not only go on to college at very high rates above local and national outcomes, but our students graduate college at 2 times the national rate.
Wow.
And for our Black alumni at 3 times the national rate, and for our Latino alumni, 4 times the national rate. And one more thing that I think is so critical is why we are so invested in Chicago is that our students almost entirely come back and are residents here. We see that about 84% of our alumni are living in Chicagoland, and about 65% right here in Chicago. They're our neighbors, they're our friends, they're our partners. And so it's an investment in these schools and these communities, but it's also an investment in Chicago overall.
Every aspect of this I love. Now, how long are they going to be singing out there?
What was that?
How long are they going to be singing out there tonight?
They're going to be starting up again in about, some of the places already started. They're going to be here momentarily. They're going to be coming here and starting up again. And they'll be going to 4:30 until about 6:30 or so singing. So all you commuters out there, if you need a jolt of energy, positivity, and hope, come see our students. Come hear them sing, and even more, get to know them.
We could all use a little jolt of positivity. You've been that for us today. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for what you do for the youth. We appreciate you.
Thank you for covering this and for celebrating the season and all that makes our city so great.
Absolutely. You take care. And thank you for joining us today on Chicago Live, everyone. The news at 4 is next.